Welcome to another episode of Washington in Focus. I'm your host, Tim Klauser, with the Center Square's Western Washington correspondent, Spencer Pauly, here to talk about a new funding opportunity put out by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for homelessness services, notably in the middle of a current funding period. So this ends the current availability that these cities and regions, continuum of cares, are getting funding from, and now they have to reapply for this funds. But it comes with new rules like a lower cap on what they can spend on permanent housing, which is where a lot of people put their money. So right now the cap's at about 87% of federal funding that they can use for that. It's going down to 30%, which is quite substantial in a shift to focus more on a treatment-based approach to ending homelessness. There's a bit of disagreement on both sides on how to do this. Spencer, you published a story recently showing that the difference in the cap on not affordable housing, on permanent housing could lead to a $40 million budget gap for the King County Regional Homeless Association. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about that and kind of what they're saying about the budget gap?
Sure. So I guess to start off, this isn't exactly a blindside hit to KCRHA because they have been aware of this since President Trump issued an executive order to shift these continuum of care funds towards treatment first approach ways to address homelessness, right? Well, that does not coincide with what the KCRHA does, which is a housing first approach. And a lot of that goes to permanent supportive housing, right? So that is the idea that in order to address homelessness, we need to have these people move indoors, and then from there, target any kind of mental health issues, drug abuse issues, and go from there. Now, that 30% cap is a pretty big blow to KCRHA, but this is a result of them not kind of leaning into Trump's executive order and shifting their strategy to a treatment first approach, right? And so that's how we have that $40 million shortfall. So now we're at this point here where we are seeing, instead of that shift, we are seeing KCRHA's two biggest contributors, that being the city of Seattle and King County, have to find ways to fill that gap. And so now what we're seeing is, amidst the budget deliberations going on in Seattle and King County, we had Seattle City Council member Alexis Mercedes Rink add an amendment that would allocate $11.8 million to the Human Services Department just to help with that emergency reserve and soften that impact of federal funding cuts. Now, also, King County is currently deliberating, as we speak today, on a plan to set up a new regional continuum of care committee, and that would kind of appropriate these funds towards the housing first approach, since there's going to be no more federal funding for this strategy.
I think it's important to kind of take a step back first. $40 million budget gap, that sounds pretty significant. They spend a lot more money than $40 million a year. And at the same time, that's just money that they're getting in federal funding. They still are getting money from a lot of the cities that participate in the continuum of care, King County itself. And correct me if I'm wrong, KCRHA has dealt with budget deficits the last few years. This isn't something that just landed in their lap. They've had issues with spending in the past.
I'll have to just also correct you. So yes, Seattle, King County, top two contributors. And then we have HUD. That's the third largest contributor to KCRHA. Now, there are a few small cities that do contribute to KCRHA, but it's not a lot of money compared to the budget. I don't have the exact numbers, but it is pretty minimal. But yes, you are right. There were budget deficits in the past, including this year in 2025. When to address a projected $4.7 million shortfall, KCRHA had to implement they had to lay off people. It was a 22% decrease in its overall workforce. They had to do a hiring freeze and just look at other ways to kind of slice their budget around just to make up that gap. Now, with the lack of federal funding, that $4.7 million shortfall is going to go to that $40 million budget gap.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a few ways this could be interpreted too, and you kind of spoke to it a little bit and touched on the housing first aspect, but there's a $40 million budget gap, but King County could close that all together by choosing to fund the programs that this new funding availability allows, which is more treatment-based approaches. But there's the argument on the other side that say, housing first is evidence-based. It's been the practice for years. A lot of people, Democrats particularly, are saying, look, thousands of people are going to lose housing if you lower this cap, which is notable. But at the same time, it's evidence-based, but year after year, in King County and Seattle particularly, you've seen homelessness increase. So if you are continuing to spend more and more money every single year, and the issue is only getting worse, at what point do you take a step back and say, look, maybe we need to be willing to shift our approach. Maybe we need to consider pulling money out of these permanent housing programs and putting it more towards treatment programs. And your story touched on this a little bit. I mean, if they don't want to give up the permanent housing programs, okay, don't put federal funding towards that and go after the private sector. I mean, in the Pacific Northwest, you have these major corporations with very deep pockets that particularly aren't happy with the environments that they're working in. I mean, I'm sure that King County and these cities are going to go out to these corporations and say, look, things might get worse unless you're willing to foot a dollar or two.
Yes. Now, I just think that in KCRHA's opinion, the research shows that homelessness is a housing first approach, or a housing issue, right? And so just to sort of switch it up and take those funds and put it to treatment first approaches, they could do that still, right? They could take that money and use it towards that. But I just don't, they could still do that first off. But putting that money towards drug treatments is, I just don't see them switching up their strategy right now, because in their opinion, and this is what I've heard from research from KCRHA, talk to people within the agency, is that homelessness is not what you see on the streets, right? So you see visible drug use, and there is a population that's doing that. But there's also a lot of people who are considered homelessness that are living in the shelters within these places that we are not seeing. And those people may not have these mental health issues. And so this is becoming such a political debate between, Democrats, Republicans, or even just vice versa. We're seeing some Democrats side with Republicans, right? And so we're just at this point now where we're getting into 2026. Is KCRHA going to shift it because of this, right? Because there's not a lot of, we're not getting traction on this issue. We're still seeing people going in and out of these shelter services now. Is that because of drugs? Is it because of mental health issues? Perhaps. We don't know for sure. So I think it is just kind of this interesting point here where I don't know if they will shift, but they do have money on the table if they sign up for this, if they go ahead and lean into the HUD's requirements. But that is something to be determined at this point.
Yeah, and I understand HUD's position where they're saying, look, homelessness is a housing issue. I mean, in a sense it is, but that's not the only part of the issue. You could say, well, what's your goal with this? If homelessness is a housing issue, yeah, you can get these people into housing, but is that going to change their lives? Are these people getting jobs? Are these people, and it's not everyone, but a large percentage of the people on the streets do suffer with mental health issues, do suffer with substance abuse issues. And if you're just putting them in a position where they can get free housing that's subsidized by the taxpayer, and then they're able to continue using, they're not out on the streets. Yeah, they're not dying on the streets. They're dying inside. And to say that's fixing the housing issue or reducing homelessness, I don't know if I would really go that far. But like you said, King County and the Regional Homeless Association, they have an opportunity to use these funds. And I think it's not very likely that they'll shift their approach, like you're saying, especially with housing first and how it's so deeply rooted into their system. But I think it may be a little bit naive to say, look, we're not going to take the money at all. I mean, we spoke on it a little bit going after the private sector, but is it really in your taxpayers' best interest to say, look, I'm not going to give these programs up and we're just going to take the $40 million loss?
There could be pushback too, right? From residents, as you were saying, when people are getting more and more frustrated with the lingering presence of homelessness on the streets and the related issues with that, drug use, public safety, crime, whatever have you. Yes, then maybe you're going to start seeing them have to shit just because of the pushback from residents. Now, you said that maybe they could fill up that gap with the private sector. I don't think it could fill that $40 million gap. I think that's a lot of money that they're going to miss from just the federal funding alone. So whatever they can make up, I just don't think it will make it. I don't think it will shift the scale, I suppose, or just band-aid the issue here.
Yeah, it depends on what they do. I mean, they're in the middle of budget deliberations, but you spoke on the Seattle City Council member setting aside almost $12 million in that budget amendment. And again, it's just the proposed budget. It's not the final budget yet. But I mean, that shortens the gap to $30 million that the private sector would have to contribute. And I get $30 million is a lot of money. But you have Starbucks, Microsoft, Boeing, you have gigantic corporations, national corporations. And I think there's an opportunity there. Will it be easy? Will they just be able to say, hey, give us the money? Absolutely not. It's going to be a fight either way, but I don't think it's impossible by any means.
We'll have to see what the new mayor does, Katie Wilson, who has, her platform was all on taxing, wealthy residents and big businesses. So she'll have to find a way to build that relationship up, right?
Yeah. It's not just Katie Wilson, though. It's the entire region. It's King County. Yeah, it's the biggest city in the region out of King County. But she's not the one pulling all of the strings. And I'm sure that there's a lot.
Is mostly prominent in Seattle. So if you're going to have these private businesses fund, they're going to
But did Seattle not pull money from KCRHA when they weren't getting the results that they wanted? Because that did happen.
Yes, they did.
They pulled money back.
That was from Bruce Harrell, who now was from the current mayor, soon to be gone, Bruce Harrell, who towards the end was more critical of KCRHA and the effectiveness of it. So it's just, we're starting to see a little bit of tear away from KCRHA and its previous supporters.
The new rules around the funding, there's going to be a lot of hiccups along the way. A lot of people might lose housing, but I think with any big change in a response to homelessness, you're going to have to take care of the issues along the way. There's going to be hiccups that you didn't expect, things that you did expect that are going to be hard to overcome. And I'm sure we're about to see a lot of that play out. But I think for a lot of people, it's going to come down to, am I getting value out of my tax dollar? We are paying taxes. Millions of dollars, not individually, but as a region, millions of dollars every year to solve this problem. And it's only getting worse. We're only spending more money on it. And the people that run these nonprofits where a lot of this money goes, a lot of them are making over $100,000 a year. And I think a lot of taxpayers aren't happy with that. And I think we saw a little bit that play out a year or so ago when Seattle pulled a little bit of funding from KCRHA. But I think it does come back to that value. And we've talked about it a lot here, Spencer. There's a lot of differences in how to approach this issue. And neither of us pull the strings here. We just write about it.
But we'll see with, the change here at the federal level, if there are improvements with this, when you see these continuum of cares fund treatment first approaches, will there be a positive outcome out of this? And that'll be something to keep an eye on, whether it's not in King County or somewhere else in Washington State or somewhere else in the United States. It'd be good to keep an eye on, and that would shift the needle to see what is working.
Yeah, and I think regardless of all the concerns that everyone might have around this, whether you're on the right or the left, whether you're in support of housing first or treatment first, I I at least think that everyone wants this to work out for the best. No one's looking at this new funding rules and saying, I hope this turns out terribly and homelessness gets worse so that we can have a win. I mean, everyone wants homelessness to go down. Everyone wants to solve the issue, but a big part of that is that no one has ever solved the issue. People have made great strides, but it hasn't been done yet. And as people continue to try to do so, you will be reporting on it, Spencer. And if any of our readers want to catch that coverage, you can read it at thecentersquare.com. But otherwise, thank you for joining us for another episode of Washington in Focus.